still, now it looks really full, but you can still tip water in there. So if you have 4 things, you have rocks, pebbles, sand and water, and you work out the right sequence, you can really fill that container up. But if you start with the water first, or you start with the sand first, then you're not going to be able to get the pebbles in, or the rocks. And so the idea is that you look at the things that you have to do, and you make some judgments as to which are the rocks, which are the pebbles, which is the sand, which is the water. So in other words, what is important and urgent, what is important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and not urgent and not important. And so you have to set up a schedule for yourself where you put the things which are both important and urgent first. And then the difficult one is putting things which are important but not urgent before the things that are urgent but not important. And that's why things like meditation, you can say that's important, but it's not urgent. You don't meditate every day. No one's going to get on your back. No one's going to tell you off. You're not going to suffer from it in any kind of tangible way. But it's important, and you need to make time for it. Making written commitments, there's some kind of weird psychology involved here, but if you write something down, it has a power that something which is not written down doesn't. You can try this for yourself. Now, if you write something down as a kind of a pledge to do something, and you show it to other people, those two things together, that has real binding power. So you can try that. If it's something you've been meaning to get around to, but you make a public pledge written down, you'll be surprised how powerful that is. There's a very interesting thing happened during the Korean War, in which 99% of American prisoners of war in Korea collaborated with their captors. And that's compared with quite a minority during the Second World War. So it's not like the Americans are not tough, or they just sort of caved in under the pressure. It was due to the particularly clever manipulations of the Chinese. And this became a really big thing. And I don't know if anyone's seen a movie called The Manchurian Candidate. This book and movie was first made when all this data first came out after the Korean War. Now, so one of the techniques they used was they would have these kind of discussion sessions, and they discuss things like democracy or something like this. And they say, okay, you're American, you're a Democrat, you don't like the communist system. Are you really trying to tell me, that it's perfect in every way? Is there absolutely nothing at all wrong with America? You see? So he's got reason. Well, I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, there's got a lot of things out there. Sort of racial prejudice and social inequalities and so on. But so somebody would be very sort of magnanimous. Yeah, okay, or not over the top yet. So then they take you up on this, and get you to expand upon it once you've made that initial small concession. And then the next thing is you're required to write an essay on it. So it's written down. And then what they do was they'd have you read it out, or someone read it out over the camp radio. So now, from being someone who's just made this kind of small concession, yeah, the country you live in is not perfect, suddenly your take on what's wrong with your country is it's a document, and it's being read out on the radio. And then people feel they lost their identity, and now they kind of don't know who they are anymore, and become very psychologically vulnerable. And that was when the Chinese would use them to piece little by little, step by step, to make more and more concessions to be consistent with the step they've already made, because we have this deep psychological need to be consistent. And so they're drawing upon these principles that people are not really aware of, and use it. And these are things that have subsequently been used in advertising and persuasion manuals everywhere. But the point really I'm making here is that these things can also be used in a positive way, and using this written commitments made public, at least amongst people that you look up to or respect, and it does have a certain power over you. Okay. What is love? Is it a fantasy? Obviously a boy's question, this one. I've been in relations, but I don't think I've ever seen it. Well, love is it's a very wide. There's a book on this I've written. It's downstairs. I think you can read it. I mean, there are so many different kinds of love, aren't there? There's platonic love. There's love between parents and children. Love between humans and dogs and pets, and sexual love. There are so many different kinds of love. So yeah, I don't think it's a fantasy. I mean, it's certainly a major part of many people's lives. But there's a lot of projection and a lot of fantasy around it. And people have ideals of love. It should be like this. It's taken from books and movies and whatever. So they sort of put love up on a pedestal. This sort of pure, wonderful love, a sort of romantic ideal of love, and then people get very disappointed when the actual business of relating to each other as human beings is not very much like that at all. But love is actually scientifically measurable. There's when people they've done a lot of studies when people are first in love, and then they do all these kind of brain scans and they see, yeah, there are all these definite kind of physiological changes when you're first in love. But that's probably like the romantic ideal. But generally speaking, those physiological changes, brain changes, usually don't last more than 18 months. So if your whole relationship is based on that kind of excitement and that's sense of being someone really special and always thinking that person can't get them out of your mind and so on and so forth, if you think that's what love is, well, yeah, it could be, but it's not very long-lasting. You can't sustain that for very long. And if you recognize that's okay, you need other things to bolster a relationship. It's very superficial if it's just based on that. And then if that it just becomes like a drug. When that sense falls away with this person, and you get so bored, and you want to find that again with somebody else, and so you're just going on and on and on, and just never develop any lasting relationships or make any real commitment, because you're addicted to that kind of love drug, which is not very mature. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of prayer. I mean, when I was a teenager, I had a girlfriend, and we go out, and then one day my girlfriend said, "I love you," and it's just, what do you say when somebody says that to you? It's like, it's really awkward. If you say, "Well, I don't love you," can't say that. And if you're just quiet, they go nói jai, so you say, yeah, I love you. And so that became it, from then every day, I love you, And for me it didn't mean anything. I just felt like I got sort of forced into this somehow, And yeah, sometimes this word just doesn't mean anything, So I think to try and look after that word and just look into it, what does it mean in your life, and in the business world, where competition is a regular part of business, oftentimes one can't always reveal the truth, or we have to lie sometimes. How can